Happy Friday. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple here. Another edition of Husker Online Headlines. We are about a week away from the Nebraska red-white spring game, and we do this every week on Husker Online here on the YouTube channel. We break down what we think are the 5 biggest headlines. Could be football, basketball, baseball, volleyball, the Big Ten, recruiting. We'll go anywhere with our headlines. So let's go right to it. Our headline number 1 this week. Saturday scrimmage. This week on Saturday, Nebraska will hold their final major scrimmage of the spring. They'll probably scrimmage for around 2 hours. It'll be live. We expect the quarterbacks, like always, to be live in the scrimmage under Matt Rule. We're going to learn a lot, Steve, when you look at this scrimmage, and we won't be able to see it, unfortunately, but if you could see this or the red-white spring game, I think most of us would say I'd rather see this scrimmage because this will really give you a good idea about this football team.
A little thrown off there. Not many people call me Steve besides my mom. I appreciate it. Sean, it's huge. I mean, they're in a critical stage of camp, and this camp, I cannot emphasize how intense it must be. The stress level is high. And this is big. I mean, this is big for a lot of guys, a lot of players. Heinrich Harburg comes to mind. This is big.
Chubba Purdy.
They're giving
Richard Torres.
Yeah, they're giving these guys a long look now. They're trying to. I mean, it's not just quarterbacks. It's, for instance, the corner position opposite Quentin Newsome. Quentin Newsome, they identify routinely, meaning the staff, as an NFL corner. Quentin Newsome's going to start at a corner. Now, who's starting opposite? We don't know that because they're moving Malcolm Hartzog around. Now, it could ultimately be Hartzog.
Hey, Marquise Buford's out too.
Yeah, it could be Tommy Hill again. They've tried. They're playing Miles Farmer at that opposite corner. They've tried just Sean Singleton, Have Morton. So somebody could take a big step toward winning a corner job there tomorrow.
What about running back too? I mean,
oh God, yeah.
Gabe Ervin Jr., Anthony Grant, Ramir Johnson, but then there's the wild card, AJ Allen. Will he go? I mean, he's been yellow or green for most of the spring.
Yeah.
So that's
I don't think he will.
I can't imagine that AJ Allen, who's been yellow or green jersey almost all of spring, if not all of spring, just says, I'm going to go scrimmage now.
He's been out all spring. So, yeah, I don't think.
And we don't really get a detailed injury report. It's not like we really truly
don't. I mean, the one thing we can say is when we saw practice earlier this week, he was wearing a green jersey, but he was doing drills. He wasn't in contact. They weren't in contact for the part of practice that we saw, but he was taking handoffs. Thank you, Megan. He's look at him. He's dressed out. He was running through drills, and he looked excellent. I mean, he looks excellent. Now what's that all mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it could have been like a concussion for all we know.
Could have been a concussion, exactly. That's right.
Yeah, in Matt Rule, I think, is pretty open and stuff. It's just hard, honestly, to get some of these questions in. I mean, heck, you've had days where you can't even get a question into Matt Rule, right? Because so many people are trying to get in. But some of the nuts and bolts, and it's spring football. So it's not like we're playing a game here on Saturday.
Right. We don't have to know the injury updates all the time. It's not a game in sight. So those are two things. I mean, you always wonder about the pass rusher component, right? It's such a big part of football. And the other day, Tony White did. I mean, I did ask him. I did get in a couple of questions of Tony White, by the way. And I just asked him, who are the pass rushers? Who are the guys who stand out? And he did offer up names. And the first guy he mentioned was Princewell Umanimian. Is that? Oh my God!
Just don't ever do that again.
Yeah.
Just stick with Princewell.
All right, P-Will, as they call him. P-Will. They also have Chief Borders.
You got that one right.
Yeah, Chief. Jamari Butler, MJ Sherman, Kai Walline. Those are the guys he mentioned. You got AJ Rollins in that conversation too, but he's new.
Did you say Jamari Butler, or is he more?
No, I did mention Jamari Butler. Yeah. Princewell, Chief Borders, Jamari Butler, MJ Sherman, Kai Wallen. Those are the guys that were mentioned by Tony White.
The money down guys.
Yeah, and it's, Nebraska's pass rush in recent years has just been okay to not very good. So you're looking for that now. Tony White likes the talent there, but you can't have the discussion without adding none of those players has proven himself at the Power 5 level as a pass rushing threat. Jamari Butler did play a lot last year, and he played in critical situations. But, I mean, it's not like he piled up sacks. I don't know if he had any. I don't know if he had any. Chief Borders is coming from Florida, where he played special teams. MJ Sherman, didn't crack the lineup at Georgia. Princewell is a freshman. Kai Wallen's coming from junior college. It's a bunch of unproven guys, Sean.
You think about Nebraska's pass rush too, and I mean that's part of the problem. I mean, they haven't had a double-digit sack guy since Randy Gregory in 2013. Randy Gregory had 10.5 sacks his first year at Nebraska. That led the Big Ten.
Sean, that's a decade.
And
that's a decade. We need to be forceful about that conversation.
Khalil Davis had 8.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's been a lot of guys kind of hovering in that like six-ish.
Yeah, stop me from going on my pedestal. We don't need that today.
No, but like, you have to have some to win in this league. You got to have guys with more than 6 sacks on your team. Like,
you need a formidable pass rush.
What that tells you is guys aren't beating people one-on-one.
Right. I mean,
Randy Gregory could beat anybody.
Yeah. And the thing I don't want to hear is, oh, come on, Sip. You can get it. I mean, you can't even count sacks that much anymore. It's just getting close to the quarterback. Blah, 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 blah. Excuse. No, the best teams in the country have guys who get to the quarterback. I mean, Will Anderson gets to the quarterback. And now I know what people are thinking on come on, Sip. Nebraska can't get guys like that. Okay, well, then if you're of that mind, you're just conceding that you'll never win a national title. You can't do that. I guarantee you can say, Sipple, you're being obnoxious. I would say Matt Rule would agree 100% with me.
Well, Garrett Nelson, we talk a lot about him as like a guy that they really hung their hat on. I mean, his best sack season as an edge rusher is 5.5.
No, it's fine.
I mean, it's serviceable. It's he was second team All Big Ten.
He's a good player.
But
you're going to do that. You need about 3 of them. You need 3 Garrett Nelsons.
Yeah, and they had O'Shawn and Caleb. I mean, they had a good group, but you just think about what it used to. I mean, Eric Martin was All Big Ten as a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. I believe he had around 10 the year in 2011 or 2012.
8.5.
But that was All Big Ten.
Yeah, he was good. They made him.
But that was coaching too.
Yeah, Bo had to get creative. That staff had to get creative because they lacked that guy. It was like what he did with DeMario Williams. Yeah, they lacked the guy. They came up with a plan. Now maybe this staff can do that. I wouldn't rule it out. There's a new look. They're playing a 3-3-5. They're moving guys all over the place. They're moving guys around a lot. So we'll see what it all looks like. I have a fair amount of optimism, actually. But you got to see it.
Yeah, just think about like DeMario Williams. 2002. He played in space more with Craig Bowl. In 2003, Bo gets here, brought him up to the line of scrimmage, and he had like a All Big 12.
Sean, do you ever catch yourself? We're talking about 2003.
Oh, I know. We just lost like half our audience here on YouTube.
Did we really?
Well, the YouTube, our podcast radio listeners probably yes, but our YouTube crowd, I think, can be a little bit younger. We got a lot. Yeah. We have like 7th, 8th grade kids at my church say, we love your YouTube show.
Well, and Sean, let's face it, they need to be educated about names like DeMario Williams. He was a fabulous player, went on to play in the NFL. Those, for the 7th and 8th graders listening, those are the type of players you need. You need to be talking about guys like DeMario Williams, who went on to play several years in the NFL, like Randy Gregory, who before he had off the field issues was going to be a top 5 pick. That's what it takes. When they had Randy,
he's still playing.
He's still playing. When they had Randy Gregory, they didn't sniff a national title either, by the way, but they were at least they had a 9-win team.
They could play with anybody though.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much, I'd say. Yeah. That's what you need though. And you can't give in. You can't give in to that notion that no, Sip, you don't need those guys. Yeah, you do.
And some of it's a development issue too. It's recruiting. Yeah, it's a development.
I think it's more recruiting.
And, when you have to bring young guys into your program and play them early, then they get a little messed up, it can't happen.
That can happen. The one, I mean, I want to go to the positive side. Chief Borders and MJ Sherman, those guys look like dudes. I mean, we'll see if they are. Jamari Butler looks like a dude. Now we'll see. Can they be impact players? Sean, what we're talking about is impact players. That's what we want to see.
All right, headline number 2, and mentioned Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini was back in Columbus here on Friday to honor one of his former players, Cole Pensick, tragically passed away a week ago in a car accident just outside the Stromsburg area on the highway. What was the name of the county?
Osceola, maybe.
Osceola, yeah. And Coach Pelini was back in town for that, but we said goodbye to Cole Pensick, just a first-class young man.
There's a good picture.
Did everything you'd want of a Husker player, undersized, but maximized his career. He was second-team All-Big 12. He played on a line. You think about the lines he played with. I mean, he was with Searles and Qualley, and I mean, he was with NFL guys on that line.
I'm glad you said that. I mean, people forget he was a second-team All-Big 12 player.
All-Big 10.
All-Big 10.
And
he was the first verbal commitment scholarship guy to Bo Pelini.
In the class of 2009.
Right. So he committed in 2008, I believe. So, yeah, and I guarantee it was a massive funeral. His dad, as you remember, Dan Pensick, was a defensive lineman at Nebraska in the late 70s and was at nearly every practice when his son was a participant. They were very close.
Coach Pelini with Ron Brown and Jeff Jamrog. That was at the funeral in Columbus today.
That's a great photo.
Ron Brown was the running backs coach. Bo Pelini, obviously the head coach. Jeff Jamrog was in an operational role on that staff.
Okay, so yeah, and it's a tough loss for the family. It's the second loss in approximately 6 months of a offensive lineman of that era. Mark Pelini was also, now he ran into a deer in Indiana. So they've lost 2 offensive linemen from that realm, that 2012 or 2013, 2014 area. So yeah, it's really heartbreaking. It is. It's heartbreaking.
Well, and Cole was just such a stand-up young man. I mean,
so was Mark Pelini. I mean,
they did everything right. I mean, they didn't come in with big egos and expectations. They waited their time. They developed and they played, and they both had solid careers for what they were asked to do. I mean, you think about that little run of centers they had. None of those guys had any NFL potential. Mike Caputo, Mark Pelini, Cole Pensick. They were all 6 foot to 6'1", 6'2", and all of them, maximized their ability to contribute. And Nebraska played high offense at a high level.
Yeah, they were 19th in the country in rushing the year that Cole started. When he was their full-time starting center, Sean, they were 19th in the country in rushing offense. So yeah, he got it done. And they were a 9-win team. And I think nowadays we should celebrate those teams a little bit more now, instead of scoffing at those 9-win teams. Because now, if Nebraska wins 9 wins, there'll be a massive celebration.
Well, and I'm also of the belief with the scheduling now, you play 10 Power 5 games a year, 9 in the league, and then 1 in the non-conference. That's a humongous difference. It's why the SEC teams always tend to have a little bit more wins, because they only play 8.
Right.
So when you play in this league now and you win 9, when you play 10 Power 5 games, that's almost a playoff level.
Yeah, that's not to diminish those.
I mean, if you're 10-2 in the Big Ten now, you're a playoff team.
Yeah, that's not to diminish what those kids did
in the new 12-team playoff. But
yeah, I don't want to diminish what
they beat Georgia. Think about that. They beat Georgia.
Right. I know they did. I mean, it was there. Yeah. So yeah, R.I.P. to Cole and Mark.
Thoughts and prayers out to the Pensick family. Let's move on. Headline number 3. And, there's a lot of just things going on with the transfer portal opening. The NCAA made an adjustment to the recruiting visit rules. But let's start with the transfer portal. April 15th, Saturday, the transfer portal will open for 15 days for the spring period. And I did find it interesting. Matt Rule, I asked him on Tuesday about it, but that, he kind of said if he had his druthers, they would have been playing their spring game even later than they are now. But you kind of have to give your program some time with this window. And, you can't have your spring game after the window closes, if guys are going to leave and whatnot. So this window, it sounded like a good idea. In about 3 weeks, I'll be curious if people still like the idea of having this specific window that kind of is in the middle of spring practice for a lot of teams.
Right. I mean, Nebraska's spring game is April 22, so it's smack dab in the middle of this notification window. I'd say it's awkward. Maybe Matt Rule would say, no, it's not.
Why not make the window May 1 to May 15th?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, does it have to do with recruiting because the coaches go out on the road? But
could be.
The head coach, so doesn't go on the road.
Not in the springtime.
So the head coach would have every opportunity to individually meet with the teams. In fact, head coaches will tell you May is their boringest month because they don't get to go anywhere.
They don't get to go anywhere. I don't know why. I just know it feels from my vantage point like it would be awkward. Why do I say that? Here's why. Because right now Matt Rule, again, is in this very intense spring where they're installing new systems. Sean, they're trying to learn about players, where players' strengths are, and putting them in the proper positions. Oh yeah, and by the way, they have guys probably contemplating leaving, and they got to get a handle on that. And the support staff handles a lot of this, but they got to figure out who they're going to bring in too, right?
Well, what the numbers are, because
Nebraska's at 99.
And that's counting Alante Brown,
scholarship players.
And he's got to come back and get through whatever appeal process he has to get back to the university.
Okay, lay it out clearly for the listeners. There are 99 scholarship players in Nebraska. They got to get down to probably 83 or 82.
Yeah, if they're going to take any additional portal players, they have to be below 85.
So 17 players are probably out.
I mean, I would think they would like to be at 82 or 83, but the other thing too is, what about walk-ons that are deserving? Like, I kind of don't like when they say, oh, just give them an NIL scholarship. No, if John Bullock or if
Alex
Bullock or Ty, I mean, if some of these guys play
Han
and play like starting level reps, I mean, shouldn't they get a scholarship? I get this NIL era we're in, but
I think Rule would be open to that. If there's any head coach that would be open to it, it's Matt Rule, because of he was a walk-on, and there's a lot of reasons why he makes a lot of sense at Nebraska, Sean, and that's one of them. He was a walk-on at Penn State. He went, and he would describe himself, he was a low-level walk-on. In fact, he was injured when he went there, and they made him a student manager for a period. I mean, he climbed a long way at Penn State as a walk-on. He'll be mindful of the walk-ons.
No, I do get, though, like, they can have an NIL package or opportunity for a guy that's going to be the exact same, but people don't respond. Like, I go back to volleyball. Kinale Akana was basically offered that type of package,
an NIL package
that was going to be exactly the same as a scholarship,
commensurate,
and they didn't like that.
Kinale didn't.
No, and she went to Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and they just didn't. You got the best libero in the country at Nebraska, Lexi Rodriguez, and Kinale might be the second best.
Right. So yeah, no, it's something to watch. It'll be fascinating kind of to watch how it plays out. Matt Rule is available to the media on Saturday after the scrimmage, and one of the questions likely will be, can you say right now who's in the portal? Who's going in?
Because if you're leaving, you're not dressing out for that scrimmage, right?
Right. And I would think the coach could just go ahead and tell you a few names if they're already in it.
Well, if they go in it, I mean, Matt Zenith from On3 and our people, I mean, they literally it's like a big board. They see the names pop in there as they hit.
See, the question will be, is there any, prominent names, guys that have played a lot of football here that go in? There'll be some predictable ones that, down the line, guys that haven't seen much action. There'll be others that don't go in the portal, that they retire effectively, right? So I don't know.
And the great thing about our company, they honestly will have something done before we even know it even hits the portal.
Good.
And then so our main job is to kind of react and kind of, what's step 2 of these portal entries if they do happen, or where it's at. But the general so-and-so entered the portal, like that will be up on the site a lot of times the second it hits the portal.
I don't think I don't I think this is okay to raise this. I don't envision like a Casey Thompson going in the portal.
I mean, I just think about NIL, and he's definitely on an NIL thing here at Nebraska. He's got
a deal.
And like, how would he be able to get, unless he found something similar, but then where's he going to go and win a job at a Power 5 program right now? Like what? So yeah,
Could be a non-Power 5 though.
Yeah, I'll be curious how that all shakes out. I do want to hit on this in this headline as well too. So the NCAA instituted some new changes. A couple of things. They're now going to allow coaches, not this spring, but going forward, they'll be able to actually talk to juniors at schools. They're not in homes, but it used to be called the bump.
Right.
So when you went to a school, you technically couldn't talk to a kid that was a junior, whether it was in the fall or the spring. So starting this fall and starting in the spring of next year, when you go into a high school and you want to talk to a underclassman, a junior, you can talk to them now.
Yeah.
And not make it so. I can't tell you how many times in my career, like, like kids will tell you, so-and-so came to my school and talked to me. It's in the spring. You can't write that because
right.
This is where Nebraska having a large media group, it hurts Nebraska. Like where, if a media guy like writes like the so-and-so coach talked to me at the school and you put that, Iowa State turns that in. Iowa turns that in.
So
that's happened in like these 20 years of doing this. Like you have to kind of know but every coach was going into schools and talking.
So it makes sense for the NCAA just to go ahead and allow those to happen because they were happening.
Yeah. It was an archaic rule.
Okay.
Like, why would you not let juniors talk to coaches?
Right. So now are
you trying to hurt these guys?
No. Okay, calm down there, big boy. It's fine now. It's cleared out. It's cleared up. So, and then the other rule is a big one too.
Yeah. And so now they're going to take the lid off official visits. You were limited to 5 official visits that couldn't start until April of your junior year, all the way until technically January of your senior year. Now you'll be allowed unlimited official visits, but 1 per institution, unless there's a head coaching change. You get a mulligan, you get a redo. Like this year, Nebraska's guys all got a redo. So that's going to be interesting to see. My biggest question though is how early will they let the juniors take the official visits? Will it have to be April, or will they allow officials to happen in January or March? Because what we're seeing, I just talked to a kid this week. He's gone on 9 unofficials in March and April to like major programs. So, they've got to look at this closer. Like these kids right now want to go on visits, period.
In the springtime.
They want to go. And we'll have some more recruit spotlight interviews when we talk to these kids that come around. That they go everywhere, every weekend. It's incredible. And
it is.
The fact that the institution technically can't pay for these trips. They can't even give them lunch.
Right.
They charge them $10 for lunch.
Some guys in NIL states are getting paid for, right? Those guys.
Missouri, Kansas, Texas, Arizona. Those are states where like there is no NIL. I believe Florida too.
Okay.
So they can't,
they go on unofficial visits.
If they go somewhere,
they're all unofficial. Yeah, but some are paid for, some are
they
not.
can't have any NIL opportunities at all because it's illegal in their state, and then they would be ineligible for their high school.
It's all. I can't imagine being just the average fan and trying to figure out all the rules and all the nuances of college football right now. I imagine when people listen to this, sometimes they're just like, how did this happen? There's some NIL. So an example, there's some states where a recruit can go on an unofficial visit and have an NIL deal attached to it where it's basically paid for. There's some states that don't allow that. That's very odd to me, but there's nothing you can really do. It's a state by state.
Yeah, there was a kid last year from the state of Georgia, signed with another program, but he would get money for every trip he'd go on.
And a lot of these kids, and then the other thing that just Sean, people don't understand this. There are kids that go on, like you were just saying, they're like professional recruits. They go on trips every weekend
to big places.
Yeah,
they're not going to like Ball State and
No.
Eastern Michigan. I mean,
No,
they're going to like Miami and A&M and Tennessee and
some of it's for fun. I mean,
yeah.
Some of it's for fun. I mean, it's not maybe
some of these kids get addicted to it.
Yeah.
I think they're like, God, I can go somewhere else now.
Stay in a nice hotel. If it's an NIL situation, they're taken care of at a high level. They can bring friends with them. They meet people. Now, if you're a head coach at one of those schools, you say, okay, well, maybe he ends up liking it here and he wants to keep coming back. And if he's one of the best pass rushers in the country, well, that would be wonderful for us. And what's it matter if the NIL operation's paying for it? It's no skin off our back, right?
I think the other thing too, because I mean, you're seeing it ever like Oregon. Like how are guys getting out to Oregon?
NIL deals.
Exactly. I mean, it's just not easy when you're in a place like Nebraska, Oregon, Notre Dame. I mean, you're just located at a place where there's not as much talent by you. So it will be like, I'm curious if coaches like this rule of the unlimited number of official visits. And I kind of think there will be a strategy that these unofficials that are happening now, they're still going to happen. And you got to sit on that official and use it at the right moment. And so,
will there be more in-season officials?
Maybe, but not everybody. Nebraska, by far, I don't even know if there's a close second place in the last 20 years, has done by far the most in-season official visits of anybody. It's incredible.
It's taxing. It can be on the staff.
Yeah, when you have 13 officials in for a game.
Say in a lot of night games these days. Now think about it.
So 13 official visitors, that's like 40 or 50 people that come in with a kid.
Okay, so now walk through it. If you're playing a night game, okay, that coaching staff, do you maybe have some degree of contact with those players and those families after the game? You're getting into midnight, 1 o'clock. Now you're coming back the next day, and what do you got to do, Sean? It's massive preparation on Sunday for the coming opponent, right? You know, you've been covering college football for a long time. What is Sunday for a coaching staff? It's a massive preparation day.
Oh, yeah. And
it's
honestly,
massive.
My experience is like with recruiting in Nebraska, they'll do a brunch, like some sort of kind of brunch with the recruits, and then they get them out of there. Like they don't want the recruits around all day Sunday.
Because they have to get, the coaches have to get a game plan prepared for the players. That's part of what's going on. There's a lot going on.
Now it will be different with Matt Rule because Monday is going to be the off day again. So like there will be kind of a nice preparation day on Mondays. And I can see why you would do that. I mean, if you played a night game on Saturday, it's really hard to come up Sunday and just get it all ready for the next day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's again, this is oftentimes these conversations wind back to this is very taxing on coaches. And I think the NCAA has been pretty mindful of that with recent legislation, and there's just only so much you can do. It's going to end up being taxing.
Yeah, I just wonder, like in Nebraska's shoes, will they want to use the official, if they can use them in March or April?
I don't know.
Well, they want to. I still think June is like the sweet spot. I think June is a great month to bring people to Nebraska.
Now, yes. Now, are you talking juniors?
Well, guys going in their senior season that plan to commit in the summer. Yeah. You've got to get them here.
Yeah. And you've talked about everything's getting sped up too.
I mean, by July 4th, a lot of the landscape is gone.
Right. I mean, players are committing earlier and earlier. You just saw it with Gage Ginther, who just committed to Tennessee, and it sort of took everybody by surprise. Here we are he commits in early April. One of the top offensive line recruits in the country. And that you're seeing that more and more.
And I think we have him underranked at On 3. I think he's a 3-star, but he is the top player in Colorado.
Yeah, I shouldn't. Yeah, maybe not one of the top offensive linemen in the country, but he is the top player in Colorado.
I think he doesn't have much of a value. People just don't have a great evaluation. I mean, he's got great offers. I mean, that's all you got to look at right there. All right, let's move it to headline number 4. The Big Ten has a new commissioner. Officially goodbye, Kevin Warren. Hello, Tony Patetti. Comes to the Big Ten Conference with nearly 4 decades of really sports media experience with the television networks like CBS and other places. And it kind of Sipple is really a shift of where this is all going. No more is the Big Ten commissioner kind of a glorified athletic director. You are a TV executive, media rights guy. Almost that's the most important part of your job. But what did the Big Ten do? They hired a guy that's an expert in that area.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it's even more. There's even more. I don't know, Sean. I mean, let's put it this way: the Big 12's commissioner is Brett Yormark, and he was the COO of Rock Nation. I mean, he was working with Megan Thee Stallion and Rihanna and doing things unrelated to college sports. Some of what he was doing was unrelated to college sports. He's the commissioner of the Big 12. George Kliakoff was working for MGM Resorts. He's the commissioner of the Pac-12. Yeah, the backgrounds now are way different than they used to be. I mean, George Kliakoff, Sean, was doing things with online gaming and the operation of sportsbook, hell, and the world of magic and comedy. I mean, they're coming from backgrounds that are very varied.
Kevin Warren didn't have anything like that on his background.
Warren, no, I mean, not. He came from the NFL. Warren came from an NFL background, and legal background. Now, a lot of these guys do have legal background, including Tony Petitti. He's a Harvard Law graduate, but yeah, he was head of the Major League Baseball network. He was one of the main people involved with the formation of the BCS. So look at that. Just look at that background right there. Head of the MLB network, helped create the BCS. Worked for CBS Sports, ABC Sports, was involved in the NFL, was involved with the NCAA basketball tournament. He's got an incredibly, there's a lot of variety in his background. 62 years old. He's the son of a New York City police officer. He's got a very interesting background, but came out of nowhere.
Are you of the belief that this was the guy over Jim Phillips, or was Jim Phillips the guy that got the renewal deal? Because I think there's, I
don't know that.
Like it's debatable, because the ACC announced an extension for Jim Phillips right as this deal was announced. Was that their way to make it look like they held on to their guy?
Perhaps.
But I look at Tony
like
Petit. I like this hire, and I was not a Kevin Warren fan. I don't know about you. I just didn't think he did this league very good.
No, I was not a Kevin Warren fan.
I mean,
we're on the same page.
Well, that one time you defended him on the show.
I only defended the part of now. I want to be clear to the listeners. I didn't really defend him. I just said the pandemic was so novel. I mean, it was such a new thing. I mean, and so being a leader at that time was challenging. But I would say, that he didn't handle it well. He really could have. I mean, he was close to not having a season.
They shut down the initial season over myocarditis, and you had immediate, I had doctors I know immediately say this is BS.
Oh yeah, and now it's proven to be.
You can't say that was, and then you had reporters saying there will be one player that dies this season.
Oh my God.
Just think about
give me a break.
And they were working with a couple reporters and trying to put out their stories at that time. And it was an ugly, ugly period for the conference.
Yeah. And let's put it this way, Sean. I don't think anybody could refute this. Anybody close to Warren, any of those reporters that were in his pocket. The further we've gotten away from COVID, the worse Warren looks. I mean, the worse the whole thing looks. There were conferences that went ahead and played early,
and they didn't start till dang near. It was late October,
right? It was,
and it would have been smarter to start it earlier, because COVID's worst period was November of 2020,
right? And now I hear from people that say, "Well, come on, Sip, you got to cut him slack. It was unprecedented." Well, we're not paying him to handle. You're not paying a commissioner to always handle things that are just routine. You're paying a commissioner a lot of money to handle things that aren't routine. And he couldn't have handled that any worse. So no, and I didn't like the feel of the Big Ten. It had an overly corporate feel under Warren. Now Delaney's too.
Think about the daily testing they used to have to do.
Oh God.
They they put that bill on the schools. They had to pay. Nebraska paid over $1 million for COVID testing.
Yeah, you're privy to a lot of information that people don't have. And I think if some people that defend Warren knew everything that was going on, they wouldn't defend him as enthusiastically. It was a mess.
Think about the nonsense of like being at Purdue that year. And you had that running back who's not even here anymore. I forget what his name was, from Florida.
Yeah, his name was his last name was Marvin Scott.
And he was going to get a play against Purdue. Nebraska wins that game, but they get off the plane. He was negative getting on the plane.
And
then when they got to the hotel, they had a nurse that traveled them, and he tested positive there. So then they locked him in a hotel room in West Lafayette, kept him away from everybody.
This is just ridiculous.
And then they kept him prisoner in there. And then they did a lab test, a rushed lab test, and they did not get the results back until like it was a noon game out there. It was like 11:15, and all of a sudden Marvin Scott just shows up to the stadium at like 11:45. And he's out on the field trying to warm himself up.
Now, to be fair to us, we were saying it was a joke then, not just in. This is not hindsight. We were at the time saying,
he had no symptoms, nothing, right. And it just some of the just that level.
Right.
And I had friends in the Big 12 and SEC, and they're like, "Oh yeah." I mean, they.
Now hold on. Now I always come across like I'm defending Warren. I'm always just trying to look at things, both sides. Now, some people are going to talk about lawsuits, I suppose, the legal ramifications. Now, he's an attorney. He's probably being as careful as he could. But again, if you zoom out and think about what we know now about COVID, it was really ridiculous.
Well, Nebraska will never get the credit, but they stood up for it.
Like, yeah, they did.
And Frost.
Oh, yeah. You don't even want to bring that up. Like, yeah, I mean, they did. They pushed
just
forward.
Because they weren't a high profile brand. They're not, no one wants to, but the fact that they took the arrows and fought this.
There were others, though.
Ohio State came in.
Yes, Ohio State came hard in.
But think about, like, there was a period where Nebraska and Ohio State were going to play their own season,
right?
And, like, play at the ACC,
right? That's what people forget.
That was going.
That's where I say, come on, don't make apologies for Warren. It was already sort of a massive screw up the way he handled it.
People lost their jobs.
Yeah, it could have been worse.
People lost their jobs. Yeah. Like, they furloughed and let go of people.
Yeah, and it's curious to me too. The Big Ten has only had 7 commissioners in its history. Okay, 7. It's curious to me why he only served 3.5. Now,
Dennis Dodd reported that they don't think he was offered the opportunity, a new deal. He did not have a new deal in front of him.
Typically, commissioners don't move on like that, especially he's landed as a chief executive of the Bears. It's a good job, but it's not the commissioner of the Big Ten. It's curious to me. I'm not surprised that that's the case. I don't think he had a lot of support within the conference, and I don't think he should have had a lot of support. I mean,
there were conference calls, Zoom calls back then where the coaches were screaming at him.
Oh yeah. Well, again, I always come off as an apologist for him, but it was a tense time and it was confusing. But there are others who handled it much better than him.
Well, unfortunately, the political landscape of the world got involved. I mean, and it turned into a 2020 presidential race piece to the pie.
Yeah, it did.
And that added a whole nother element to all that. But
we don't need to get into
no more Kevin Warren. Tony, I'll be really curious if in July to hear him at Big Ten Media Days. That'll be the first time we probably hear from him.
Tony.
On the now he's going to do like an introductory press conference, but like at the conference media days, because I was never impressed with Kevin Warren's talks of those things.
No, that's part of that's another reason why I was sort of critical of him. It always felt overly scripted,
like a bureaucrat,
right? Overly corporate. He did not come off as real at all.
I am very proud of the progress that we've made in the Big Ten conference.
Yeah,
it felt like a kid reading his high school speech that he didn't even write. It just didn't have like a genuine
nothing about
dude feel.
No, it didn't. No, and to be fair to Kevin Warren, he followed one of the very best conference commissioners in any era in Jim Delaney.
I always found it interesting. I was told this from a pretty good source that Warren and Delaney never really talked or had a relationship.
Not surprised,
because he
Much
wanted
different.
Delaney wanted Jim Phillips. That was
Yeah.
his pick, and they went in a whole different direction. All
Yeah.
right, final headline here. Nebraska basketball is busy, and luckily we got Robin Washut on our side, because we can just sit back and watch him go to work. But they've added 2 key transfers this week. Bryce Williams, the leading scorer from Charlotte, was one of the best players in the CBI tournament. And then Rank Mass, all Missouri Valley post player from Bradley. I mean, these are 2 big-time additions by Fred Hoiberg. The university's already acknowledged and announced both these additions. And you got Hunter Salas. You've got some other things.
Well,
cooking.
you got a big visit this weekend in Javion McCollum, who's a point guard. They're still looking for a point guard. McCollum's down to Nebraska and Oklahoma. Now the one thing that works against Nebraska is his all-time favorite player is Trey Young. So that's an former Oklahoma player. These players he got are real. I mean, I've been highly critical of Fred, and for obvious reasons. He's won 23% of his Big Ten games. I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? It's year 5.
Well, I sent you that graphic. I mean, Nebraska, every team in this league has made the NCAA tournament the last 2 years, other than Nebraska and Minnesota. And Minnesota went in 2019.
Nebraska 2014. I mean, the excuses for Fred's program are, they boggle my mind. But now, on the positive side, landing these 2 guys and adding them to the roster it's very promising. If you can get a point guard, but Williams, the player from Charlotte, is a bona fide scorer that can get you double figures in the Big Ten. I've watched his film. He's not just a 3-point shooter. He can score. He's got a mid-range game. He can get to the hole. That's not his forte, getting to the rim, but he can. He gets a shot off easily. It's not easy to block. He's a real scorer. The same with the Bradley center. I think he can come in and get you 10 points a game, 10.7 rebounds. Will he be as good as Derek Walker? Hard to do that. Walker had a really unique game and made himself into quite a player. Now, this guy has a lot of similarities to Walker. He's great around the rim. He uses the backboard pretty well. Not as good as Walker. I've never seen hardly anybody use the backboard as good as Walker. He doesn't put the ball on the floor as good as Walker. Again, hardly anybody does. This guy can go out and shoot threes, though. The kid from Bradley shot 35% from the 3-point line and looks good shooting it. So, yeah, Fred, hey, you add him to – okay, think about it, Sean. Now you have –
2 more spots.
you have Jamarcus Lawrence as a shooter. You have Casey perhaps coming back as a shooter. Now you've added Bryce Williams. They're going to be hard to guard. And Fred, again, I've been highly critical of him, but I'm not highly critical of Fred as an offensive mind or preparation.
He took a step forward this year.
Fred's always prepared his teams well. They just don't always execute like he wants them to. But he's great at preparation, and he's great at finding guys' shots. Now, Sean, you saw Jamarcus Lawrence, you saw Casey. They're great shooters. And you're adding a great shooter and now a pretty good big man who can shoot.
You got Juwan Gary back. CJ
Gary's
Wilcher,
tough.
He has 2 years
Wilcher
left.
can shoot a little.
He's got 2 more years left.
Wilcher can shoot it too. He's streaky, but he can shoot it.
That's a guy that you kind of wondered if he'd be here after Abdelmasse and some of these guys left the program. And
you can tell what I'm saying here. If they can handle the point guard piece, if they get that if they manage that well, this is a team that should, come on, it should be a top 7 to top. I'm just going to say it, Sean. What I see is a top 7 team in the Big Ten with this personnel. Now, again, they got to get the point guard thing right.
Well, Hunter Salas.
You have Lloyd in the, you have a guy, Ramel Lloyd, that could probably do it, but he'll be new. It'd be nice to get this guy from Siena. It would be nice.
Yeah,
we'll
there's
see what
2
happens.
other guys visiting this weekend. Latrell Wrightsell Jr.
Interesting.
Former
Omaha Central.
His dad played for Creighton, but they're not looking at Creighton. He was leading scorer for Cal State Fullerton. He's getting
leading scorer, rebounder, and assist man for Cal State Fullerton.
So he's coming in this weekend. And then you also have Brady Dunlap, a Notre Dame signee. He's down in Nebraska, North Carolina, Penn State, St. John's, and Villanova.
He's not a transfer. He's a high school kid.
So,
yeah, no, this is critical period for Fred. And these guys that he's bringing in here are players. So I got to say, Sean, I'm pretty optimistic. Now, what do you do with Hunter Salas? There's some question out there. It's an interesting one to me. Could Hunter be your answer at point guard? I believe he can. Now, there's others that say, no, that's not his role. It wasn't necessarily his role at Gonzaga. He'd bring the ball up the court, but they had Drew Timme, and, you're just getting the ball to Drew Timme often in the high post, and point guards, maybe the importance is mitigated a little bit. I think that Hunter can play a point guard role. I think he could. Would it be ideal? Maybe not. But I just still wonder if you could just say, Hunter, you're going to play the point guard, and he could become a very good point guard.
And Creighton's in play with him though too.
Yeah, Creighton, Alabama, I think is in play. Oh well, come on, Wake Forest is in.
What's interesting?
Hey, Sean, Wake Forest and Georgetown are in play too.
When he was coming out of high school, NIL wasn't kind of what it was.
Right
now, it is. So
yeah, he's going to get a good.
Look, Creighton's got an edge on Nebraska basketball and NIL because they've won more. They've got more support for their program, more money invested in that program. That type of support for Nebraska is more driven to football and volleyball. They have NIL in Nebraska basketball, but I hear stories about Creighton's NIL. Mm-hmm. And that's why Baylor Shineman's coming back.
Sure. Well, they had to get him back. His importance escalated when Nembhard left.
I can't believe that guy left. Yeah. I mean, but that's the portal era in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that are going to happen.
Yeah, Ryan Nembhard leaves Creighton with all that talent coming back and coming off of an Elite Eight. Yeah, who knows what happened there? It's
I mean, just think about stuff we've dealt with on football, like Casey Rogers entering the portal. Luke McCaffrey just going in the portal.
Ernest Hausman.
I mean, you're just going to get Adrian Martinez. I mean, he was kind of led to the portal.
Yeah, that one made more sense. But
it all worked out in the end. All right, well, big weekend with the scrimmage. Make sure you're on HuskerOnline.com. We'll keep you up to date with full coverage from that scrimmage. Husker baseball, if they can get them all games in, they've got Northwestern. We'll have coverage of that as well. And Robin Washut will keep you up to date with all the basketball news. And we've got a recruit spotlight lined up again this weekend, Sip. We're going to talk to Jacob Smith from Cheshire Academy, second visit to Lincoln. So we'll have Jacob in this weekend. So plenty to check us out. If you're not following us, like, download, subscribe to us here on this Husker Online YouTube channel or anywhere that you find podcasts. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan.